Vladimir Putin, of course, president of Russia, has decided that he's going to write an op-ed in the New York Times. It's called A Plea for Caution from Russia. And he does several things in this article. And of course, the minute he wrote it, the whole country was ablaze. People are outraged, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans. How dare you? How dare you write an op-ed? I don't know. That was his opinion. He wrote it. New York Times published it. People are mad at the New York Times for publishing it. The president of Russia sends you an op-ed, you're not going to publish it? You don't think that's newsworthy? Come on. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So what are they so outraged by? Well, first of all, does Putin have propaganda in the article? Of course he does. He makes it sound like they're completely on the side of international law and that the Syrians are lovely folks, the regime is, and he says he's concerned about American national interest. Oh, I'm sure you are. And he says that he's concerned about the well-being of Israel. Oh, look, so please spare me about your concern about us and our allies. And then he has lines like this. From the outset, Russia has advocated peaceful dialogue, enabling Syrians to develop a compromise plan for their own future. We're not protecting the Syrian government, but international law. Wrong again, Bob. You're totally protecting the Syrian government, and you're doing it for financial reasons and geopolitical reasons. Everybody knows that, so that part is nonsense. On the other hand, he had some good points to make. Just because someone's doing something wrong in Russia, or we don't agree with them on this issue, doesn't mean that they can't make good points. One of the good points he had to make is, look, the United Nations has a system in place, and you must follow that system. You need the Security Council to agree to something, otherwise the world does not agree. You cannot take that action, and it is not legal. Technically, he's 100% correct. It's kind of impossible to argue with him, okay? Nonetheless, of course, he's Russian! He's Russian! So when he's stating the law, I'm sure it's wrong. He further states a very good point where he says, quote, the world reacts by asking, if you cannot count on international law, then you must find other ways to ensure your security. Thus, a growing number of countries seek to acquire weapons of mass destruction. Now, look, that's a very good point because what he's saying is, if we don't use international law, and here the U.S. is saying, if I won't seek UN authorization if I'm going to bomb Syria, and hence I will be outside of international law, well, then you're going to encourage people to say, hey, you know what? The only way I can prevent that is apparently not through diplomacy, not through the law, but by acquiring nuclear weapons so that they cannot attack me, kind of like North Korea. Again, I don't agree with Putin on a great majority of things. I don't agree with him on Syria. But that is a point that is fair. Now, the thing that really lit people up was the end of his op-ed where he made the best point. Of course, that's unacceptable in America. Quote, I would rather disagree with a case he made on American exceptionalism, referring to President Obama's speech on Syria, stating that the United States policy is what makes America different. It's what makes us exceptional, he quotes President Obama. It is extremely dangerous to encourage people to see themselves as exceptional, whatever the motivation. There are big countries and small countries, rich and poor, those with long democratic traditions and those still finding their way to democracy. Their policies differ too. We are all different, but when we ask for the Lord's blessings, we must not forget that God created us equal. So he has done the great crime here of saying, perhaps America is not the only exceptional country. And of course, rage from American politicians and pundits. Let's give you a small sample here.
I got an email with what President Putin had to say, and I have to be honest, it was at dinner, and I almost wanted to vomit. The reality is I worry when someone who came up to the KGB tells us what is in our national interest and what is not. And, it really raises the questions of how serious this Russian proposal is. But I think the American people, when they read that, will reject it wholeheartedly. He may have an opposite result as a result of his
Says he has the Pope on his side. You know.
Well, I am sure that the Holy Father has moved Putin at various other times.
Hasn't he just stuck his thumb in John Kerry's eye, one in John Kerry's eye and one in President Obama's eye with this?
Joseph Stalin is smiling from the grave. The president had the smarts, and we talked about it the other morning, to talk about American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism is alive and well, and it's vivid and demonstrated by our history of helping people around the world, our moral superiority in reaching out to those who are oppressed.
Mr. Putin has made his entire presidency in Russia on the basis of Russia being an exceptional, unique civilization.
Interesting.
So he's denying the United States the right to call itself exceptional in some ways, at the same time that he himself is always stressing the reason that Russia stands alone is because it is unique.
If you're going to argue me that Vladimir Putin is hypocritical on this point, I hear you. If you're going to argue me that America has moral superiority, gee, I wonder why the rest of the world can't stand us. Look, if the conservatives on Fox News, as you saw in the middle clip there, argued for all the wonderful things that at one point made us the beacon of light in the world, the United Nations, arguing for human rights across the world, protecting whistleblowers and dissidents, Marshall Plan where we gave foreign aid to our former enemies. If they argued for that stuff, then you could begin to take their claim of moral superiority with some degree of acceptance. But to say we have moral superiority because, as he put it, we have a history of helping people throughout the world. Really? Like recently when we invaded Iraq and over 100,000 civilians died, where we were helping the people of Iraq? Come on, man. And they say this with a straight face. How unbearable is it for somebody to go around saying, you know what? We are the superior ones. Gee, who else did that? I can't quite remember. I don't think that worked out well, right? But how dare this Putin tell us that we are not exceptional? Why doesn't he know his place, that he is below us? Gee, again, I can't figure out why the world doesn't love us. And look at this. It's a drama between Obama, Kerry, and Putin. He's stuck a thumb in our eye. So if he says something rational, in the midst of otherwise what I view to be 75% propaganda in that op-ed, well, no. It's a drama between Obama and Putin. Don't listen to him. He's the bad guy. Now, look, imagine if a regular person acted this way. Let's just call him Bob and said, hey, you know what? I'm exceptional Bob, okay? And I have moral superiority to all of you. If America was a human being, think about how despised it would be. Let's say he's a guy who walks into his office, or he's a kid who walks into school and says, I have Bob exceptionalism. I am the most exceptional person in this whole school. And because of my exceptionalism and my moral superiority, I reserve the right to punch anyone in the face without asking permission. Now, but wait a minute now. Look, if somebody strikes at somebody, we have rules. You know, you bring him to the principal's office, or you report him to human resources, whatever your situation might be. No, I do not listen to any of those rules. And from time to time, I'll punch someone in the face who didn't punch me at all, or who didn't punch anyone else, and I'll take their wallet. But I am exceptional. Now, who wouldn't despise Bob? Imagine somebody like that at work. How much would everybody hate him? Imagine somebody like that at school, going around like saying, now all of you bow down to me. I am exceptional, and I can take action against any of you at any time, and you'll like it. He would be the most hated person in the school. Gee, I wonder why the rest of the world doesn't love us anymore.